And am I where I am? Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Подожди, Ушани.
I want to offer everyone coffee, but I don't think I can.
Thank you. I am Hossam Hamdi. I'm just joining now. Can you hear me?
I can.
Dana?
עכשיו, רגע, עכשיו שומעים אותי או לא שומעים
לא,
אותי?
במיוט. לא.
Okay.
סליחה. רוצה בשמה? בואי נשמע. מי זה?
זה שכולו נכנסה. עכשיו כולם.
נעשה כוסה. אחרי כסמרטות שלו. אז אתה אולי במקום שזה כסף זה תבוא לכסף.
Someone's recording things. Gallery view. Oh, there's Gay Lockwood. No. What's that? It says Karen, but that's Gay. That's Gay Lockwood. It's Barbara and Danny. Do you see him?
I see them. I don't see them. I see them. I see. Don't see who that is.
"36 participants. Urge.
לא רואים אותך, תתקרבי.
מה?
תתקרבי.
בסדר.
אוי, אני לא רוצה לראות את הגוף שלי.
תפסיקי.
מכנסה, נכון.
רגע, תסמן לי קצת.
ככה,
אבל תלוי אם את זזה, אז...
הנה, זה אריאל, שמה.
אבל את שמה לב שאת לא יכולה לזוז הרבה במיקוד, כי ככה זה במצלמה. הנה, טוב, אני שם את זה ככה, אני מקווה שתוכלי עכשיו טיפה יותר.
אני אעזור, עכשיו אני יודע, מה אכפת לי, אני לא אקרא.
אורי, יש עכשיו משהו גם.
ערב טוב לכולם, תודה שבאתם. Karen, you will take over.
You don't want to do Karen? Karen.
Karen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me now? I was still muted.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
Happens to me every time.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. We're not seeing anything on the screen, right? I'm not seeing anything. I'm just seeing you right now, Ariel, correct?
Ariel?
You. That's you, right?
Yeah.
Are you muted? Your microphone near you. Say hello.
Press gallery view.
Hello.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hello. We're both here.
On. Okay.
So I think everyone knows we're just waiting to give people a chance to sign on before we start. Process takes a few minutes.
Hi, Jessica.
What? Hopeless, so you can stay alone. I can't not well, and I don't feel well. What's this? It's hopeless. I can't move it. You know anybody there? You know anyone there? What?
Say, Karen,
Yep. Hi.
just while we're waiting, I just want to say that in memory of Asher, I put cardamom in my coffee this morning.
Oh.
to celebrate one of the dozen things he taught me.
Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds delicious. I'll have to try that.
האמת שלך מדי. את רוצה את זה? לא. אני דעתי. מדי.
One of the other things that Asher taught me in the 60s was IBM punch cards, which introduced me to computers, and really it was empowering for the rest of my life.
I remember those.
Karen, there's some down his basement if you want to give them out to people.
That's right. Oh my goodness, yes. Yes.
אני אגביר לך.
חושב שקרן זה הבת של אחותו.
Where is she being buried? Next to his wife.
It's another thing that this moment reminds me of. You're talking about old age with Asher once trying to find a nursing home for my mother. And he said, you know, at this age, at this time, nonverbal communication becomes more important. And that's what we're doing now, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Here or now it's needed?
Again.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
What?
Hi, Ruby.
Karen,
Yes.
can you you want to start? You want to begin?
So, you think we're good?
I think so.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try to pull up my slides and then I'll get it started. We don't have do we have just to show briefly the order? Can we do, thank you. Okay. Well, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here with us today for Bill's memorial service. My name is Karen Schuker. I and my sister Kathy, who is also here with us today, are Asher's nieces. And I also want to acknowledge at the outset, thanks to the people who helped us put together this service, some of whom will also be speaking today. So I will be the first speaker, and this is the order of service. You don't need to, if you're on the list, you don't need to worry about when is your turn, because Donna will announce that it's your turn. And then after the last formal speaker, we invite others who would like to share any words to please do so. Okay, so if you'll give me one moment, I'm going to try to do something I've never done before with an audience, which is share my screen. And I'm going to change view. Second. Okay, Donna, does this look right? Donna?
Yeah, it looks good.
So Donna, are we going to mute everyone? Have we done that yet?
מה זה?
גליה כתבה לי שהיא רואה שאנחנו יושבים ביחד והיא כועסת עלינו, אני הולכת.
I think we might just take a minute to make sure that everyone except whoever is speaking is on mute. Are we able to do that, Donna?
Everyone is muted.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Almost 2 years ago, when we were similarly together on Zoom for Nomi's memorial service, Asher emphasized that the main focus of the service was to celebrate Nomi and her life. I think that Asher would want the same spirit to guide us in our memorial service for him today, and that he would want us to celebrate him and his life. And so the photos and the comments that I've put together are in that spirit. My goal in my presentation is to share an overview of key highlights of Asher's life. I'm sure I've missed some, and I apologize in advance for that. But we have many other speakers who will help to fill any gaps and will also, I think, share more details about some of the highlights that I've included when they share their memories and experiences of Asher.
I'm leaving,
I'm just trying to move to my next slide. Why is it not moving? Oh, there we go. Okay. So here are photos of Asher as a young child. Asher was born and grew up in Montreal. His parents were very important people in his life, as was his sister Rena, who is pictured in two of these photos, along with their aunt Jean Siegel-Diner in the upper photo.
I'm not going to eat
It's not like popcorn.
Okay, this next slide has to do with my very last Zoom visit with Asher, which was, I think, exactly 1 week before he passed away. It was quite a long visit. And one of the things that we did during that visit was that I read to him a 5-page document that I found in his papers that he wrote in March of 1948 when he was 18 years old. The document, where is it? I'm going to show it to you. I can't find it. It's typed on very, very thin paper that I know by the name of onion skin paper. The title of the document is Chalutziyut and the Birth of a Nation. In the first paragraph, Asher writes, sorry, too many things on my screen here. The time when rhetoric and pleading were necessary to convince a Canadian Jewish youth of the validity of Zionism and the significance of Jewish achievements in Palestine is now over. By now, the UN Declaration of November 29th, 1947 has had a partial impact on our minds and our way of thinking. And while it is true that the wave of superficial enthusiasm and identification with the struggles of the Yishuv has received great impetus by recent events, the full implications inherent in the establishment of a Jewish state have yet to be grasped by the majority of Jewish young people in this country. Just remind you, Asher was 18 when he wrote this. In the middle of the document, he asked the question, when will Zionist leaders awake to the fact that the, quote, heroic deeds of the Chalutzim have and will be accomplished, not by mythical men from Mars, but by ordinary young Jewish men and women, among whom should rank a proportion of their own sons and daughters. And then the last sentence of the document says, we have a chance to make up for the opportunities we have missed in the past. Perhaps it will be our last chance. We cannot afford to let it slip by again. Now I have to find my notes. Well, Asher took up his own call to action, and I'm not sure if we have the very first manifest, but we found the manifest of his passage to Israel, sailing from New York in September 1948. And of course, that was the beginning of a very long connection with Israel, which continued throughout his life. Okay, turning now to Asher as a student. His university studies began with a BSc at McGill University in Montreal. He then studied medicine at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. He often talked about his time as a medical student, and he made lifelong friendships at medical school. What I remember most about him talking about his time at medical school are his descriptions of the camaraderie that he shared with his fellow students, which included cooking meals for each other in rotation. He described that they had a system where they shared cooking meals and everyone took turns, and it just sounded like a lot of fun. His next degree was a PhD in epidemiology at Harvard University. Now, my understanding of that PhD is that it wasn't actually part of a plan, but it was the result of a meeting that exposed Asher to new ideas and led him to a new journey, which then became the rest of his journey. And in connection with that story and other stories, Asher often said to me that it's good to plan, but it's also good to be open to opportunities that life can present unexpectedly, and therefore also to be open to changing one's plans and one's direction. I think that's good advice. Okay, Asher's Arctic adventure. I'm sure many of you have heard about it because although it wasn't a very long time in the Arctic, it certainly made a big impression on Asher, and he really loved to share stories about his time there. And the one that stands out for me is him talking about giving someone a shot of some kind of alcohol to drink because he didn't have anesthetic, and I think he was going to stitch up a wound. But that was his Arctic adventure. Okay, Nomi. I won't say more other than you may have noticed that I've spelled Nomi's name in one of the many ways in which it's spelled. I've spelled it the way Asher spelled it, which is the way I grew up knowing how to spell it. Very, very special person to all of us, and of course to Asher. Okay. So during the first part of Asher's career in public health, he was involved in conducting a number of epidemiological studies. Many of us know about or have heard about the sibling study on cardiovascular risk factors, which was conducted in Canada, Israel, and the United States. Asher and Nomi traveled around these countries in a minivan that they nicknamed or called Degel after the Israeli flag, because the van was blue and white. At least I think they used it everywhere. I certainly remember it. Asher also applied his research skills to daily life. He took a very serious approach to decision-making and loved to gather as much information as he could before making decisions, many decisions, especially, of course, serious decisions. And once the personal computer entered his life, Asher became very attached to that computer and regularly disappeared for hours to get lost in his research. And for anyone who hasn't seen this room, this is a photo of his study at the House of Newton. Asher loved to share ideas in conversation. I think we all know that. He loved to share ideas in formal presentations, with colleagues, with students, with family, with friends. I'm sure we all have and treasure very special memories of many conversations that we enjoyed with Asher.
Karen, you've been muted.
Okay. Did I just mute myself? Have we been good up until now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So public health was the focus of Asher's career, and a significant part of his involvement with public health had an international dimension, which included many things, including being chief medical officer for health manpower research at the World Health Organization for 4 years in the mid to late 80s. And also work in many, many countries, I believe at least 40 countries around the world. So lots of travel, lots of work in many, many different countries. And in all of this work, I know he used to talk about this, his focus was always on developing community-based and community-led public health programs. So being rooted in the community, being directed by the community was a huge focus for him. Asher was also a leader in curriculum design for medical education curriculum, with a focus on developing primary care physicians and serving underserved and disadvantaged communities. One element of his approach was a focus on problem-based learning, which is something he introduced me to when I took up teaching and have incorporated in my own teaching as well. He was the founder of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the Ben Gurion University of the Negev, and he also consulted at other medical schools, including the medical school at McMaster University, which is in Hamilton, Ontario, and that's the one time that he visited us in Ontario. Okay, I put the course in quotation marks, because that's affectionately, I don't know, around the table, we talk about the course, which Asher, together with Laurie Vanderschmidt and later Dominic Scrency, taught for, I believe, 50 years, a very, very long time. First at Harvard and then at Boston University. You'll be hearing more about this course and other work from Laurie and Dominic. I remember Asher and Nomi's lives being very much organized by the course. So of course, the course meant that the autumn semester was untouchable. And the course, if I'm remembering correctly, often or always met on a Friday. So our Fridays were organized around the course. And when the course finally stopped running as a course, it took a very long time for Asher and Nomi to realize that they didn't need to organize their lives around the course anymore, and that they could, for example, travel in the autumn, like just a sort of novel idea. Asher loved teaching. He loved his students. When he spoke about his classes and his students. He just lit up, and it was such a joy for him. Okay, what we affectionately referred to as the book evolved from the course. So this book, which is available in both print and ebook formats, now provides an ongoing resource for the learning goals and methods of the course. And having read the book myself, I can say that it provides a superb guide for truly implementing a competency-based approach to teaching and learning, a goal that in my experience is something people talk about a lot. You know, we should use a competency-based approach, but it's often more talked about than fulfilled. But it was fulfilled in this course, and this book is an excellent guide for people who would like to integrate it into their own teaching. Okay, I'm going to move now away from work, sort of into life, starting with exercise. Asher was devoted to exercise and very disciplined about it throughout his life and to the very end. His favorite exercise, which I don't have a picture of, I think was swimming, but he also loved to walk, use the stationary bike and other things. And of course, he was very, very disciplined about doing the back exercises that he needed to help him do his best to manage the chronic back pain that he lived with. Asher loved the outdoors. He loved the beach, and in the past several years was able, with the help of Dana and others, to enjoy many visits to the beach. He also loved going to the local park in Mevaseret, which he did on a regular basis with Mark. The photo on the bottom, for those of you who don't recognize that, is a photo of his beloved Bellows Pond in Newton. This pond, which I think is an artificial pond, but nevertheless is beautiful, is walking distance from the house in Newton. And Asher loved going for walks around that pond on a regular basis. It was one of life's pleasures when they were in Newton, the walks around the pond. Food, talked about food earlier. My memory of meals, shared meals during medical school. Asher really enjoyed preparing food, cooking meals. And again, you could see, you know, throughout his life, to a very recent photo of preparing food. Sometimes he prepared the entire meal, and sometimes he was a sous chef, and he loved it all. Homemade pasta sauce was one of his specialties. And of course, we know that a day was complete only if it included at least one square of chocolate. And of course, you love food and you love conversation. Well, what's better than combining food and conversation? Sharing meals with family and friends was a special pleasure for Asher. And I know that we all treasure the many memories we have of meals and conversations that we enjoyed with him and Nomi, some over holidays, some just getting together, just many, many, many such wonderful times together. Children. Asher loved children, and many of us have shared special memories in recent days. A number of us have shared our memories of playing with Asher when we were children and of being entertained by Asher, which he did with jokes, with magic tricks, with puns, with songs, and of course the famous ear wiggling, which I looked up in preparing for this, and apparently it's quite a rare skill that only about 10% of the population have that, are able to wiggle their ears. Of course, many of these were not just for children. I think we continue to enjoy all of these things as adults as well. I would also like to share words written by my sister, Kathy. These are Kathy's words. Asher was my very special uncle. We went for long walks on the mountain, and he made it possible, along with Nomi, to visit Switzerland. I will never forget the seders and wonderful visits we had over the years. I will never forget those very special moments. Music. I think we all know how much Asher loved music, both listening to music at home, which he did all the time, but also going to live concerts. And he would go to concerts locally, but he also would often plan a visit around a concert. And it became an occasion to make a special trip or visit a place that he might not otherwise have visited. And so many favorites, but the Borromeo String Quartet, one of his very favorite musical groups. And there's a recent photo of Asher enjoying music on the computer. And of course, art. We're all familiar, I think, with Asher's deep, deep passion for art, most especially the Impressionists. Even more than concerts, while he would certainly take trips to go to concerts, even more, he would make special trips of all kinds in all countries in order to see a special exhibit, especially Impressionist exhibits. And in this photo here, that giant book, if it looks giant in the photo, actually a book of Canadian Impressionists, which I didn't realize until this book was published, I think about 8 years ago. There were Canadian Impressionists in the event. You're not sharing. Oh, are you still seeing my screen? I just got word that my spouse is not seeing the screen anymore.
Yes.
We are seeing the screen, Karen.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, staying connected with people we know was a fundamental part of life for Asher. Asher and Nomi were the only people I knew for whom making a long distance phone call was no different from making a local call. Of course, as long as you used the Kirby card. So if you were calling long distance, you got yelled at if you forgot to first enter the Kirby card number. Then email, once the computer became a part of Asher's life, he loved using email as a new way of keeping in touch. And then most recently, Zoom. So many of us were able to enjoy many visits on Zoom with Asher. And it was so interesting. He never lost a sense of awe about being able to see someone right in front of him as though they were in the very next room or the very same room, when in fact they were thousands of miles away. When I describe Asher and Nomi to people who did not know them, what stands out for me always is their passion for living life to the fullest and their enduring connections with the many, 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 many people in their lives. Asher's life and work have created many legacies that will live on through us and through many others who are not here with us today. It's an honor to be able to celebrate Asher's life with you. Thank you for being here. That's the end for me, Donna.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Stop screen sharing.
Okay, thank you, David. And mute.
Thank you so much, Karen. I have no words. I mean, I will. It's so many meaningful memories, and if you excuse me, I will just pass it on to Ariel to be the next one to speak. Ariel, בבקשה.
In the early 50s, as a student of medicine at the University of Lausanne, Asher came to Paris for one of his many visits. When he saw Asia, my mother-to-be, ill in bed, he made a quick evaluation of her condition and said assertively to her spouse, "If you are not taking Asia to the hospital at this very moment, I'm calling the police," thus saving her life. A couple of years later, my mother is in labor and I'm just about arriving. The loyal friends, Nomi and Asher, are there beside her. Early 60s, Nomi and Asher are in Israel for their annual summer visit. 2 a.m, after an exhausting journey, they climb the 42 steps to our flat in Jerusalem with 2 huge suitcases, and Asher at the door with a wide smile and the characteristic thunderous laughter that follows. Driving all over the country in mythological degel, a thorough research, Asher does not cut corners. Boston, early 70s. My mother is in a sabbatical. I'm a terrified boy in an unfamiliar environment. Asher and I are in the Rambler heading to the park, where Asher instructs me to take the wheel and drive. Asher takes a leading role in establishing the medical school in Beersheba. Educational innovation, humanistic approach, and ideas that abound from his mind, combining with his charming personality. 1983, Nomi and Asher are with us at our flat as my mother takes her last breath. Time passes. Nomi and Asher are in Geneva. The study flat is filled with boxes. In them, thousands of notes, the Siegel archive. 90s, conversations about arts, crusaders. Whatever Asher gets interested in, he does it in the most deep and thorough manner. 21st century, it is becoming more and more difficult to move around, but no surrender. Talking politics, there is criticism, realistic and constructive. Occasionally, Asher sums up with a pun, witty and precise. Humor is there all years long as a characteristic feature. Nomi is always there to explain the joke. Nomi is always there, period. Nomi and Asher is a symbiosis, inseparable. Each of them brought different things, and together they created rich fabric that touches thousands of lives, even of those who never heard of them. Asher, may your memory be blessed. Nomi and Asher, may your memories be blessed.
Thank you, Ariel. Very much. we will proceed, and the order will be that we will have first Bruria here speak as a member of the very wide family. Then we will have friends speaking, and then colleagues from both medical schools in Boston and in Beersheba. So Bruria, please go ahead.
שומעים אותי? דנה? שומעים? בן?
תראי כזה מחכם בראש.
שומעים אותך. אוקיי, תודה. עם מותו של אשר, אנחנו שלושתנו מרגישים...
לא שומעים אותך? לא, יסתה.
תגבירי את הכל פשוט. שומעים אותה.
לדבר יותר בקול?
שומעים אותה? אז אצלנו פשוט זה אוקיי, בסדר, תודה רבה, סליחה.
שמעת? כן, אוקיי. עם מותו של אשר, אנחנו שלושתנו מרגישים סיום של תקופת חיים ארוכה מילדותנו ועד היום, מלאה זיכרונות נפלאים. לא נוכל להפריד את אשר מנלי. הם שניהם היו כל כך נוכחים בתקופת ילדותנו, בחרותנו ובגרותנו, ועד היום כשאנחנו כבר עם ילדים מונכדים. הם היו זוג למופת, מלאי אכפתיות, אהבה ותמיכה, האחד בשני ושניהם כלפי האחרים. המוני תמונות רצות בראשנו עוד מלפני חתונתן, כשנני ואימה ראיה היו אצלנו בבית כל פעם שהגיעו לארץ, ולאחר מכן חתונת נני ואשר, ומאז כצמד מלאי טוב, חוש הומור, המון ידע ונתינה. תמה תקופה שנזכור אותה, וננצור בליבנו את כל הרגעים, השעות והימים שחלקנו איתם. הסתיים כאן פרק נפלא, שלצערנו אין לו המשך, אבל הזיכרונות לא ירפו, והם יחיו איתנו כל עוד אנחנו חיים. אוהבים ומתגעגעים, ברוריה, נעתי וטיליק.
תודה רבה, ברוריה. Thank you. The next person who will speak will be Bob Lev. I think one of the earliest friends of Asher, if not the earliest. So please, Bob, you can unmute yourself, and we would be happy to hear you. Bob, that's it. Good.
Can you hear me now? Yes, all right. I've known Asher for a little over 70 years, I calculated. It started in Lausanne, where we were medical students together, and we lived in the same apartment. We shared an apartment between 1954 and 1957. I want to emphasize several aspects of his personality, which Ariel mentioned one or two of those already, but his intelligence was so obvious. I think he's probably the smartest person I have ever known. He was also creative. He would come up with projects and ideas that nobody else seemed to be able to think about. And also, one of his characteristics was persistence. When he dug into a subject, he exhausted it. He learned everything there was to be about it. Now, most of the medical students in Lausanne were interested in careers in private practice. That is, dealing with patients on a one-to-one basis. This was not Asher's way. He was, the equivalent in economics would be micro versus macroeconomics. Asher was interested in the large picture, in what was called at that time social medicine, which then became known as public health. But that was his main interest. And one aspect of that has been referred to already by several people. That has to do with medical education itself. He became very interested in curriculum development and imparting ideas to medical students in a comprehensible way. And I think you have several of your speakers here who will probably talk about that because they wrote this book on medical education. And I think it was largely because of that that he was incorporated into the World Health Organization, which he spent actually, somebody mentioned 4 years, I thought it was 5, but anyway, he spent 5 years, all that time in Geneva. He left Boston, he went to Geneva, and he was working on that. And I know that he helped in the establishment of medical schools in several countries. One of them was actually Egypt, Port Said, the medical school that he helped develop with the assistance of the dean there. And also somebody else mentioned Beersheba in Israel. He was instrumental in that place. And there's a story you probably don't know, and that's that the Shah of Iran actually invited Asher to come and help them establish a medical school which could rival that of Israel, mentioned specifically Hadassah Hospital. And Asher was actually in negotiation when the Shah became ill and he had to abdicate, and he went to the United States. And then the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, and it was over. He was not interested in some Jew from New York, from Canada coming and teaching them how to establish a medical school. Another major interest of Asher was epidemiology, of course. That's part of the public health domain. And he got very interested in the diseases, epidemiology coming, of course, from the epidemics which were terrible in antiquity and in the Middle Ages. And he became very knowledgeable about diseases such as tuberculosis, the plague, and then some of the viral diseases which we are still suffering from, including the current COVID epidemic that we are now exposed to. In Switzerland, interestingly enough, some sanatoria were still open, and they sent us as medical students to the sanatoria for a month or two to learn about the approach that was taken. Tuberculosis, now we're talking in the mid-50s, the tuberculosis had been more or less cured with various antibiotics, but we still went to the sanatoria, which had other types of respiratory illnesses. And I remember reading Thomas Mann, of course, for this Magic Mountain in preparation for the life that was being lived there. And that was sort of amazing to me. And Asher also did one of his clerkships there. I want to finish with a episode concerning the final examinations in Switzerland. These were necessary for us to get our degrees. And the examination consisted of an interview with the professor of the subject, and you had to pass that examination or else you couldn't continue. And there was a professor of microbiology named Auduroy, and he was a very elegant Frenchman from Strasbourg in France, tall, elegant, and very suave. And he started to talk to Asher. He asked him about certain subjects, and he ended up with asking Asher if he knew anything about tuberculosis. This happened to be one of Asher's favorite subjects. So Asher that is, gave actually a discourse on tuberculosis to this professor of microbiology in Lausanne. And the professor was big enough to recognize the erudition which went into that presentation. And he was amazed at what Asher told him. And he said, it's in French, so I'm going to give that and then translate it. He said, that was étonnant. On s'instruit mutuellement, which means we are teaching each other. Now here you have a French professor. This is this European system is a hierarchy. the professor is at the top and the student is at the bottom. And can you imagine the impact that comment had, telling a student that the professor was actually learning something from the student? I will never forget that episode. And Ash was very humble about it. He never talked about it, but I did. I remember that. And that's what I wanted to say for my admiration of Asher, that he was able to have that impact on this very pleasant French professor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. It was a beautiful story, and you brought back to life how you were in your 18, 20 years old so long ago.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I will read now the words written by Nomi Hirschberg. Nomi and Moshe were very good friends of Nomi and Asher from Boston, and they wrote a few words. I will read in Hebrew first, and then the translation in English. אשר סגל, לזכרו. לאשר היה הכל, מראה טוב, חוש הומור, חשיבה מקורית, וראייה מפוכחת על העולם. והייתה לו נעמי. לאשר היו חיים מלאי סיפוק, הרפתקאות, יוזמה ויצירתיות. אשר היה רוח החיה בכל אירוע, ולהיות בחברתו הייתה חגיגה. לאשר היה עניין רנסנסי בעולם. הוא אהב אתגרים, מוזיקה, אומנות, תיאטרון, סקרנות וספרים. משפחה וחברים, להם היה נאמן לאורך שנים. הוא היה מורה מצטיין. אשר היה צנוע, חריף, עקשן וביקורתי. היו לו עקרונות, והיה מעורב רגשית במתרחש בעולם, אבל היה מרוחק ממעורבות פוליטית. האגודה היחידה שהיה חבר בה הייתה העמותה לשימור האגם הקטן בניוטון, ליד ביתו. גם כשהיה קשה לו, אהב לטייל סביבו, וליהנות מהצמחייה שהשתקפה במימיו עם חילופי העונות. כשראינו אותו לאחרונה בזום, נפרדנו מנעמי. הוא חזר ואמר באותה הזדמנות, זו חגיגה. אנחנו חוגגים את חגיגת החיים שהיו לנו ביחד. כשהבין שנגמרה החגיגה, הלך גם הוא לעולם שאין בו מתחים, מאבקים וכאבים. יהי זכרו ברוך. נעמי, משה וגור הירשברג. Now I will read in English. Asher Siegel, in his memory. Asher had everything: good looks, a sense of humor, original thinking, and a clear vision of the world. And he had Naomi. Asher had a life full of satisfaction, adventure, initiative, and creativity. He was the living spirit at every event, and being in his company was a celebration. Asher had a Renaissance-like interest in the world. He loved challenges, music, art, theater, curiosity, and books. Family and friends to whom he was loyal over the years. He was an outstanding teacher. Asher was modest, sharp, persistent, and not shy to criticize at times. He had principles and was emotionally involved in what was happening in the world, but took a step back from being politically involved. The only association he was a member of was the Association for the Conservation of Bullows Pond in Newton, near his home. Even when it was difficult for him, he liked to walk around it and enjoy the vegetation reflected in its waters with the change of the seasons. When we last saw him on Zoom, It was when we said goodbye to Naomi. Asher said then that it's a celebration. We're celebrating the wonderful life he and Naomi had together. When he realized that the celebration was over, he also went to the world where there aren't any tensions, struggles, or pain. May his memory be blessed. Naomi, Moshe, and Gur Hirschberg. Thank you very much, Naomi and Moshe. The next speaker will be Menachem Ackerman. Menachem will give a class in Hebrew in memory of Asher, and we will, after he gives the short lecture, we will translate the essence of it. Menachem.
כן, שלום.
שלום.
וברכה, שלום לכולם. את יכולה לפתוח את הסקרין? את הטקסט?
כן, אני אפתח רק רגע.
תודה רבה. כן, טוב, אז שלום לכולם. אני זכיתי להכיר את אשר, את נעמי טוב, אפשר להגיד, אבל בתור ילד, בזכות הוריי, מנפרד ועידה אקרמן, שהיו חברים מאוד קרובים, גם לנעמי כשהייתה צעירה בצרפת, אחרי השואה, וגם להורים שלה, אפשר להגיד, לפחות לרשל גורדה, ואחרי זה גם בתור עמיתים, כי הוריי גם היו רופאים, והיה להם גם את המשותף הזה עם אשר. ומה שאני רוצה בהזדמנות זאת, להגיד דבר תורה, כפי שהצעתי לדנה, יהיה קצר, ומה שבחרתי זה פסוק, הפסוק הראשון, של פרשת נוח, שכתוב, אלה תולדות נוח, נוח, איש צדיק תמים היה בדורותיו, את האלוהים יתהלך נוח. There is translation in English and in French also of the pasuk for everybody. Traduction aussi en français pour ceux qui veulent. לכן, קודם כל זה יפה, אני חושב שבחרתי בפסוק הזה, כי אשר היה אדם מאוד נוח, ועד כמה שהכרתי אותו, אז מתאים לו. אבל בעיקר יש חידוש של חכמים שאני אביא מדברי רש"י על הפסוק הזה. תראו, פסוק הזה מעניין. כתוב שמדברים על תולדות נוח ושתי נקודות. ומה הם התולדות? נוח, איש צדיק תמים היה בדורותיו, את האלוהים יתהלך נוח. כלומר, זה נחשב לתולדות של נוח. הפשטנים יודעים שיש פסוק אחרי זה שמדבר על התולדות, הילדים של נוח. והילד נוח 3 בנים, את שם ואת חם ואת יפת, זה בעצם הפסוק שבא אחרי זה. אבל חכמים לא הסכימו לדבר הזה, כי הם הבינו שאם כתוב אלה תולדות נוח, ומיד אומרים נוח, איש צדיק תמים היה, סימן שזה נחשב לתולדות. ובואו נראה את זה בדברי רש"י. רש"י נמצא בדיוק למטה, גם שוב בתרגום גם לאנגלית וצרפתית. אלה תולדות נוח, נוח איש צדיק. זה היה הקושי של רש"י, איך ייתכן שכשאומרים התולדות, אז מספרים על נוח. אז רש"י נותן פירוש ראשון שלא נסביר אותו, הואיל והזכירו, סיפר בשבחו שנאמר זכר צדיק לברכה. כלומר, זה הפשט, באמת התולדות זה הפסוק הבא, אבל מנצלים את ההזדמנות, אם מדברים על נוח, מוצאים את הכרטיס ביקור שלו, ומזכירים שהוא היה צדיק תמים. אבל דבר אחר, ועל זה אני רוצה להתרכז, דבר אחר זה הפירוש השני שנמצא בצד שמאל, כאן, של רש"י, דבר אחר, ללמדך, כן, באנגלית זה another explanation, או בצרפתית גם כן, דבר אחר ללמדך, שעיקר תולדותיהם של צדיקים מעשים טובים. כך אומר המדרש, ולומדים מנוח לכולם, כולל לאשר, בוודאי, שעיקר תולדותם של צדיקים מעשים טובים, והיה חשוב לי מאוד להגיד את זה. כולנו יודעים ששמענו את האחיינית של אשר, אבל אנחנו יודעים שאשר ונעמי לא השאירו צאצאים פיזיים. גם יש את אריאל שאימצו אותו, אפשר לומר, אבל ילדים לא, ולפעמים הצער והשאלה הזאת היא נוגעת לנו, ולכן לי חשוב ללמד את הדבר הזה שאמרו חכמים, שעיקר תולדותיהם של צדיקים מעשים טובים. כלומר, יש תולדות פיזיות, ויש תולדות שהן למעשה המעשים הטובים שאדם עושה, שיהודי עושה. אני חושב שהיסוד הזה, אני רוצה להגיד, שהיסוד הזה הוא בעצם מבוסס על האמונה היהודית, וזה בעצם כתוב כאן מפורש בתורה, כלומר, אפשר להגיד שזה ביטוי של דבר השם בעניין הזה, ששום דבר שנעשה על ידי בן אדם לא הולך לאיבוד. היום יש גישות אחרות שמאמינות באותו עניין, אבל כאן הדברים כתובים מפורש, אם כתוב עיקר תולדותיהם, כלומר כשאדם עושה דברים, הדברים לעולם לא נעלמים מן העולם, לא רק ילדים וצאצאים או דברים שנבנים בעולם החומרי, אלא גם מעשים טובים שאדם עושה, הדברים האלה נשארים בעולם. ולכן אפשר להגיד בבטחה על פי הידיעה או האמונה הזאת, שעיקר תולדותיהם של צדיקים מעשים טובים. אני רוצה להוסיף בעניין הזה את הפירוש של הרבי מאיר לבוש מלבים. הוא נמצא למטה, אבל תשאירי למעלה, כי אני לא אקרא אותו, אני אגיד את הדברים בעל פה, שממשיך את הרעיון של דברי חכמים, שרש"י הביא אותם, רבי מאיר לבוש מלבים שחי בסוף המאה ה-19 ברוסיה, היה מלומד גדול, משכיל גדול, ומפרש גדול של כל התנ"ך בצורה מאוד מודרנית. הוא כתב שלמעשה כתוב פה שנוח היה צדיק תמים, והוא הסביר שלמעשה מבחינת מה שאדם משאיר, יש את הצד השכלי, הצד האינטלקטואלי, שדברים שהוא מפתח, גם זה נשאר. דבר שני, זה ההתנהגות שלו, אפשר להגיד האופי שלו, המידות שלו, והוא אמר, בשורה התחתונה הכי חשובה, זה המעשים שהוא עושה כלפי בני אדם אחרים. זה הדבר שהוא הכי נשאר בעולם. והוא אומר, צדיק זה מצד מה שנובע מחוכמתו, משכלו ומהתפתחות חוכמתו, ותמים זה מה שנובע מהתנהגותו. כך כותב המלבים, אני מזמין את דוברי עברית, לפחות בטח גם באנגלית זה תורגם, ללמוד את הדברים במילותיו על הפסוק הזה. והוא אומר בסוף, המיזוג של הצדיקות והתמימות, כלומר של החוכמה והאופי הנאה, המידות התרומיות של האדם, כשהם באים לידי ביטוי כלפי אנשים אחרים, זה באמת המעשים הטובים שהם עיקר תולדותיהם של צדיקים. אני כמובן אסיים את דבריי ואגיד שכמה נאה וכמה יאה לומר שהדברים האלה אם נאמרו על כל אדם שמורם מעם, שהוא מיוחד, בוודאי שהדברים האלה נכונים כלפי אשר, וכמובן אני מצרף את נעמי, לא זכיתי להגיד דברי תורה בספדה, אפשר להגיד בהזכרה שלה, אני רוצה לצרף אותם, אבל אצל אשר הדבר הכל כך מיוחד, וגם הזכירו את זה חוכמתו, אבל לא סתם חוכמה, חוכמה של רפואה וחוכמה של חינוך. הוא היה גם איש חינוך, ובזה אני מוסיף גם כדוגמת ההורים של נעמי, שהיו אנשי חינוך דגולים, הרב יעקב ואשתו רחל, שהיו שניהם גורדין, שהיו אנשי חינוך למופת, כל אחד בתחום שלו, ואשר מיזג ושילב גם את הרפואה שהיא חסד יומיומי כלפי בני אדם אחרים, וגם את גדלות חינוך של רפואה, שזה למעשה גם כן שילוב של לעשות טוב, אבל גם להיות טוב, לעשות טוב ובחיוך גדול, וגם להיות אדם מורם מעם בהשכלתו. לכן הדברים האלה שיהיו לזכרו ולעילוי נשמתו, תהא נפשו צרורה בצרור החיים.
תודה רבה 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 לך מנחם. Thank you very much, Menachem. Well, the summary is the text that you read from the book of Noah, that tells that says that what the righteous people leave after them is their good deeds, and definitely Asher had so many good deeds in so many levels that he spread around family, friends, students, everybody. Thank you.
Dana, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Hossam Hamdi. I'm very sorry to interrupt at this moment, but and I know there is an order, but I have been from the beginning. I was very keen to be here tonight, but I have to go to the airport. I'm flying tonight, so if it is possible, I can say a few words, and I apologize for the friends who they should start talking now. But being here with you, with all of you tonight, was something very important for me. So if I can have your permission to say a few words so I can catch my plane.
Definitely, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dana. First, I would like to thank you for connecting me with Asher during the last year. After many years, I was separated or disconnected with him. Perhaps I am maybe not from the very close entourage which are present here today, but this may also say something very important, that Asher, how he has affected the lives of many people, not only in US or Canada or France or Israel, but all over the world. And I was one of the students who touched my life, and his effect on me and my family is still now. I knew Asher 43 years ago, in 1979. I think one of the friends he was mentioning that the work of Asher with a university in Egypt. Just a small correction, it is the Suez Canal University in Egypt, not Port Said. Port Said is a city. And I was lucky in my life. I was associate dean at that time of this new university, which was established on the Suez Canal. And the idea is to start the relation through academia between the two countries. And Beersheba was on the other side at the Nakh Desert. And I've met Asher on the Suez Canal. And I was the chairman of surgery. I'm a surgeon and a medical educator. And he told me, Hossam, would you like or can you leave surgery for 1 year and come and stay with me in Boston? I'm not going to give you a degree or a certificate, but just be with me for 1 year. And this year has changed my life till now. So I went to Boston, and it was a real apprenticeship, being with him. And at the end of the day, reflecting, he had a room full of books and drinking coffee with the cardman, as it was mentioned at the beginning. And then we just talk, and he pull a book and he gave it to me. And then you will say, there is a new medical school in Canada called McMaster, and they are doing something called problem-based learning. Go and see what is happening there. Go and visit Southern Illinois and see Barrows when he's talking about problem-based learning. Go to Case Western Reserve and see the rise and fall of Case Western Reserve, new curriculum. So on, it was a real apprenticeship. And during this year, I wrote the Suez Canal University new curriculum, which was based on this book, the course design and the community-oriented medical education and the task analysis and competencies. I keep telling in different conferences, international, when they start talking about competency-based education, and they don't know that this is from the 70s, early 70s, and I think Asher was one of the pioneers who introduced it. Now I am in Dubai, I am in United Arab Emirates, I am the president of Gulf Medical University, and I'm still carrying on, and I have the book of Asher, and I use it in teaching. I'm a professor of surgery and medical education. I got a PhD later on, 20 years later, in medical education from Groningen. And I have lived all my life, over the last 50 years, professional life, wearing the two hats of surgery and medical education. But now I'm mainly in medical education. And Asher's teaching ideas and thoughts have affected not only me now, but it's affecting thousands of other people in our region and beyond. And they keep mentioning his name. And I would love that if we can compile together all the writing of Asher, books, publications, thoughts, and ideas, and I will be very happy to help in putting it together. Thank you very much for asking me to be with you and for all what you did to connect me with Asher and keep me connected. And I will love to continue being connected with his friends, relatives who are present tonight. And I think my email is available, and I will love to come and see you and visit you in Israel, and you come and visit me in Dubai. You will be more than welcome. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Hussam. It's an honor to have you here with us, and thank you so much for your words and for sharing the experiences you had with Asher as his student and as a pioneer in medical education.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Dossie Rabin.
First, I hope you don't mind that some of my stories are going to repeat stories you've already heard, but they're nice stories. To begin, Asher loved the Impressionist paintings, which people have mentioned, and it's made me think of my impressions and recollections of Asher. First, David and I met Asher in Boston in 1963. Asher was David's advisor at the Harvard School of Public Health. The saying about 6 degrees of separation seems to hold true here. We somehow found out that Asher's medical school roommate, Bob, and I see he has been here today, I didn't know his last name was Lev, but that he was married to my New York dentist daughter. I think the name is Varda. So Asher always seemed to know so many people and be able to connect so many people. Another recollection. As a teenager, Asher would give talks about Zionism and helped in the creation of the newborn state in the 1940s. I remember his telling us that after the war, he was offered one of the beautiful old stone Arab houses, but refused on moral grounds. Another recollection. Asher was the storyteller par excellence, and he could even laugh at himself. One story he told, he and Nomi were organizing for their wedding ceremony in Paris, I think, and had some related papers. Asher said he put them on the car roof, which he meant to do for a moment, but he drove away with them on the top. Don't remember how long he said it took him to realize the papers were there, but I almost always think of that story when I have a package and am tempted to just rest it on the roof momentarily. Another story. Asher, in the French tradition, was particular about his food. Nomi was appalled when she once saw our maple syrup was not labeled pure. She said Asher would never use it. And Asher had a unique method of judging restaurants. When we went out, he would frequently order pepper steak, explaining to us that that was a convenient standard for rating a restaurant. But both he and Nomi also liked raw vegetables, rabbit food, and they often called each other Rab. Way back early in his career, Asher, with Nomi's help, did a study of same-sex twins, one in Israel, the other in the States, to observe the incidence of heart disease, showing imagination, boundless energy, and intrepidness. He and Nomi drove all over the States and all over Israel interviewing people. Late in his career, Asher tremendously enjoyed his WHO job, going to all kinds of exotic places. I remember our getting postcards and loving to see where he'd been. Nomi said it was the fulfillment of a boyhood dream. So these are just some of my impressions and recollections of Asher. A final recollection. Nomi once said that when they were invited out, she usually didn't bring a hostess gift because, she said, Asher, with his wit and stories, was the gift. And surely he was a gift to all of us.
Thank you so much, Dasi. Asher was indeed a gift, and Nomi's saying was so true. And thank you for all the stories and recollections. The next speaker will be Laurie Vanderschmidt. You can unmute yourself. Laurie, we cannot hear you. You need to unmute yourself, to press the unmute button. אני לא יכולה לעשות את זה, אני יכולה לעשות לה ask to unmute, אבל אני לא יכולה לעשות unmute. אני עושה את זה.
No, okay.
Now we can hear you, Laurie, please.
Okay, fine. I had to unmute it. Okay. Look, anyway, Ash, I have a little paper about it. Asher Siegel, my friend for 50 years, my partner at work, my partner overseas, has died. We were co-directors of the Center for Educational Development in Public Health at Boston University. We talked together at BU. We talked together in Togo, West Africa, in South Africa, and in the Cameroons in East Africa. We swam together and walked together. My first memories were in our basement offices at Boston University. He was a good-looking young academic. I had a monster plant that I fed coffee grounds to in our basement office. This was its only nutrition. We then moved to our office, thanks to Ramona Arnett, to a house on Beacon Street. The sunshine there was wonderful. Asher was an adjunct professor during the time I was working with him. I felt I did a lot of the work and he got all the glory. But that was generally true for women at that time. Ramona remembers his bad puns and self-confidence. Together, we started the School of Public Health at Boston University, training doctors and other health professionals to train others to work at home and overseas. The World Health Organization and the Agency for International Development funded our program. That was 50 years ago. I miss Asher.
Thank you so much, Laurie. It's, he was your colleague and you were colleagues for so long.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we all miss him. Thank you. The next to speak will be Asher's and Laurie's student, Dominic.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Karen, for allowing me to say a few words. I was introduced to Laurie van der Schmidt along with Asher around 25 years ago. I didn't experience Asher as a physician or a researcher, but as an educator. Through our work together, he and Laurie quickly became colleagues, mentor, and friends. When I think of Asher, I think of someone with a generosity of spirit, a trait exercised by his willingness to share his knowledge, insight, personal and professional experiences with anyone who wanted to listen. Learning and cultivating learning was a value that was core to Asher's being. Besides being a brilliant physician epidemiologist, Asher was a born educator. Asher's caring and commitment to his students' learning was shown through his patience and acknowledgement of their ideas and perspectives. In the classroom, Asher was humble and unassuming. Although capable of being that sage on the sage on the stage, he preferred to be the guide on the side. In his calm, methodical, and sometimes humorous way, Asher coached students to explore their insights and ideas while helping them to think critically, help develop thinking critical skills in producing remarkable outcomes. Asher was an unassuming intellectual giant and a wonderful human being. His intellect, passion, labor, humor touched so many, countless individuals, institutions, and governments around the globe. Asher's love for chocolate may have energized his efforts, which we used to see frequently, while his passion for art and music brought an aesthetics to his ideas and designs. As a result, he produced elegant, logical, and simple solutions to complex problems. I will miss Asher's humor, wisdom, and guidance in friendship, especially dearly. I feel sad that others after us will no longer have the opportunity to meet and know somebody of his intellect, passion, and character and humility. If they could get to know and emulate him and emulate somebody like Asher, the world would be a much better place. My sincere condolences to his family, his colleagues, and friends for their loss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominic. That was beautifully said. Thank you. The next speaker will be Shifra Schwartz. בבקשה.
אם אדרש לתאר את פרופסור אשר סגל במילה אחת, אבחר במילה האנושית מענטש. ואם אדרש לתארו באופן אקדמי, הייתי בוחרת במילה איש רוח, על כל משמעויותיה. הכרתי את אשר לפני 30 פלוס שנים, דוקטורנטית חדשה בבאר שבע שכתבה אליו כשהיה בבוסטון, ושאלה שאלה בנושא תולדות הפקולטה. אשר ציין שיהיה בישראל והציע שניפגש. הייתה זו פגישה ראשונה מיני רבות במשך 3 עשורים, והם תמיד קיבל אותי בפנים מהירות, בסבלנות רבה, אין קץ, כשרק נעמי ז"ל רעייתו מזכירה מעת לעת את לוח הזמנים, ומנהלת את לוח פעילותו. הייתה בין שניהם הרמוניה יוצאת דופן, ונוכחתי בפעמים הרבות בהם ביקרתי אותו בבוסטון, וגם בבית בעומר. במשך כל השנים הללו לא ראיתי את אשר יוצא מגדרו אף לא פעם אחת. הסבלנות שלו אל בני האדם הייתה אינסופית. השיחות איתו, בעיקר בנושאים הקשורים לחינוך רפואי, היו תענוג צרוף. הוא לא כתב הרבה, כוחו היה במילותיו בעל פה, וראייתו הייתה יוצאת דופן וייחודית. השעות שזכיתי לבלות עמו בשיחות היו שוות ערך לעשרות מאמרים. הייתה לי הרגשה כי כולנו, הסטודנטים ואנשי הפקולטה למדעי הבריאות, היינו המשפחה שלו. כך הוא ראה אותנו, כך הוא התייחס אלינו, ותרומתו הייחודית לרוחה של הפקולטה הינה מורשתו האמיתית לנו. אשר היקר, מי ייתן ותנוח על משכבך בשלום לצד נעמי רעייתך, כצמד יונים בלתי נפרד, תהיה נשמתכם צרורה בצרור החיים לעד.
תודה רבה, שיפרה. Thank you very much, Shifra. The next speaker will be Carmi Margalit. Carmi, בבקשה.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we hear you.
Just one moment. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Asher was my medical education mentor, really a kind of professional father. I met him for the first time in the spring of 1974 in the basement of the Harvard School of Public Health, where he headed the teacher preparation program. In his particularly unimpressive cellar office, he convinced me to join him at the nascent medical school in Beersheba that still didn't exist. That was to become the Faculty of Health Sciences at the one-year-old Ben-Gurion University. Next, we met that summer when I managed to get leave for a month from my US Army job as a pediatrician at Fort Lee, Virginia, with a stipulation in my orders that I was not allowed to wear a uniform in Israel. I helped him and Oded Suskind run the first faculty medical education workshop in the library of the old Kupat Cholim Klalit specialist clinic in Shchuna Gimel in Beersheba. I was already an experienced medical educator, I thought, but the workshop proved to be my first experience teaching the principles and practice of medical education to clinicians who were there mainly to ensure that they would be candidates for teaching appointments in the new school. There I learned that the central idea in planning the new curriculum was competency-based curricular planning. This meant that the teachers themselves would develop definitions of a competent physician in their own specialty. Then, as Asher explained slowly, clearly, and always with a smidgen of humor, they would work back from their definition of competent doctor to planning how best to teach students to become the kind of doctor they had described, and how they would evaluate whether students had reached their goal. Over the 7 years before the graduation of the first cohort, while doing various jobs in the faculty, I learned from Asher much about medical education, but most of all, I learned to emulate his personal characteristics: openness to people and ideas, excitement tempered with a critical attitude when encountering new approaches, listening quietly, kindness to students that they could translate into kindness to patients, tenacity in pursuing a goal, strong positive relationships, and all this tempered by that especially un-Israeli characteristic, modesty. Asher never said it, but his motto could have been, push your work, not yourself. Moshe Privis, our founding dean, said of only 2 faculty members that I know, כשפגשתי אותו, ידעתי תקף שהוא חייב לבוא אלינו. אישיות כל כך מיוחדת. When I first met him, I knew right away that we had to have him. Such a special personality. Since those early times here in Beersheba, 48 years have passed. Let me paint you in words a more recent picture. This Sukkot, 14 of us sat around the holiday table in the Sukkah. Asher was on my left, his minders sat on his left, and Adina sat on my right. Leo, our son-in-law, sat opposite us with his son Noga, aged 6, and his 4-year-old cousin, Naveh. Also opposite were Keshet, mom to Noga, Shoeva 11, and Elul 7, and Naveh's brother, Hillel 6, and his parents, Ateret and Dani. Naveh's fear of wheelchairs had almost canceled our invitation to Asher. Dana had called suggesting that Asher would like to visit on the upcoming holiday, and I realized that this could be an opportunity for the family to meet him again. But the next morning, while picturing Dana's description of the now wheelchair-bound Asher, I imagined Naveh's terror at seeing him. I suggested to Ateret and Dani that we cancel the visit. But they both insisted that we not change anything. It would be an educational experience, they said. On seeing Asher roll into our living room, Naveh retreated behind Dani, but was quiet, even controlled, as he took it all in. Unexpectedly, Noga, the extrovert, viewed our well-wheeled rolling guest with more reticence than his junior cousin and backed away. They both heard Asher's difficulty in expressing himself, as he frequently started a sentence and then groped for words to continue. But they also felt his natural attraction to kids of all ages, sizes, and personalities, and they sensed the welcome all the adults around them extended. Despite 92-year-old Asher's difficulty in expressing his delight at being with little children, I reflected that this was the first time since Nomi's death that Asher was with us on Sukkot. Several of us sat in the living room for a while. Asher spoke little, but always intelligibly, frequently getting stuck in mid-thought. Adina suggested that the children sing, and I was surprised to hear Asher join in on key, obviously delighted. In retrospect, at that point in time, I missed the significance of his singing. Mark and Abraham were taken aback that we urged them to join us at table. "We will sit outside," Mark insisted. But Adina's unmistakably heartfelt hospitality triumphed, and we all moved out to our year-round sukkah on the patio. I read aloud the traditional ushpizin, Aramaic for guests, that hung on the wall, a formulaic but warm welcome to the spirits of 7 renowned forefathers who lived ages ago: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David. Right beside the ushpizin hung a new ushpizot that Adina read to welcome renowned foremothers: Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Abigail, Huldah, Hannah, and Esther. We sang the Kiddush all together, ending with a rousing rendition of the Shehechianu Margalit style, with Asher joining in. Finally, we all sang the plaintive Sukkot song that asks about the reasons for all the odd customs of the holiday. Why the sukkah? Why the etrog? Why the lulav? Why the aravot? Why the hadassim? Lama sukkah zu? Questions with clear answers. Why did Asher and Nomi end their lives with years of distress and suffering? And there was Asher's voice again, on tune, joining us all. I began to understand the meaning of that voice. We began the meal, and I noticed Asher's hearty appetite. I recounted to the family yet again how we knew each other and how he was the architect of the innovative Goldman Medical School curriculum that later became the basis for the curriculum of the medical school for international health, another innovative project. Then, unexpectedly, Leo, a professor of comparative literature, asked him across the table, asked not me, but Asher, "How do you design a curriculum?" As I began to answer, Adina restrained me. "Let Asher answer," she said, subtle voice. To my amazement, Asher answered, slowly but surely. "You define the end, the outcome. First, I filled in the words he could not find. "You describe the physician you want to graduate. And," said Asher quite clearly, "chain backwards, step by step to how to teach," I finished, singing together with my old new mentor, just as we had so many times in the past. Since then, I have realized that every time I teach, part of me will be teaching with Asher.
Thank you so much, Carmi. I'm so glad he had the opportunity to come and be with you on this Sukkot. So, now is the time for people who hadn't signed up ahead of time and would like to say a word. And now would be the time. I will read a very short sentence that wrote Avishai Antonovsky. Avishai Antonovsky is the son of Aaron Antonovsky, who was another founder of Beersheba Medical School. And he was here at the beginning of the ceremony, but then he had to leave. And he said that his strongest memory from when he was a boy, they lived next to Nomi and Asher in Omer, is that Nomi used to call Asher the chocolate monster because of his immense love to chocolate. So that was just one small memory. Anyone else who would like to say a word, please go ahead.
I would. Lori. Can you
Yes,
hear
Lori.
me?
Yes,
Can
we
I
can hear
say,
you, Lori.
Can I say some things?
Yes, please go ahead. Lori, if you can lower your screen a little bit, we will see all your face. Currently, we can just see. No.
Is that
There
better?
we go. Perfect. Yeah. Please go.
So,
Lori, I don't know if you can hear me. Your window froze. Lori? Lori, we cannot hear you now. You're muted and your window froze. If you can start again from the beginning.
so he about going to medical school. He always told me that he was living with Moshe Dayan, and Moshe Dayan told him he better go somewhere else because there's not going to be a medical school in Israel. So that was one thing. And I don't know if anybody went to the Dolphin with them in Cambridge. He always said, I'm here just for the lemon. They used to split the salmon, and that's what he said. They'd order an extra salad, and that's what he always said. I'm here for the lemon. So, and I just want to tell you that was me at the bottom with the kids. I knew him since then. My dad was one of his classmates in Lausanne, and my sister, who's on, Claudia, she was a twin, and he and my father were the only ones, because she died. He was the only one at the service with my dad, and the other what was the other things? I always went with them to Cambridge, and they'd get the chocolate that Asher would put into his coffee. There was a store there that he liked to get it, and I used to go to the market basket with them. And I came to visit him in Israel, and Dana helped me a lot get there. And I miss him. And oh, one more. He was on the boat with us going back from I guess it was maybe France to from Lausanne, and the seas were so bad that he stayed in the cabin with all of us, because I mean, for the whole time, because it was so bad, they couldn't get back to where he needed his cabin. So those are some of the stories that I wanted to tell. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you for sharing the stories.
Anybody else?
Yes, if anybody else would like to speak, please go ahead.
I would like to share just a little story. I'm Mara. I'm the daughter of David and Dossie Rabin. My mom spoke earlier. And I just wanted to share that I also knew Asher from a very young age and remember the wiggling ears and lots of jokes, but also just an amazing gift. I went to medical school the first summer after my first year of medical school. I really don't remember how this all came to be. And I was talking to my parents about this, but Asher and Nomi opened up their home to me and I lived with them. And Asher arranged for me to spend time with Yoram Singer in a town outside of Beersheba. And it was a really seminal experience for me. And I'm now in family medicine very much because of my experience with Yoram. And Asher had also arranged for me to spend time learning from an emergency room physician. It was just an incredibly rich experience. So just like so many people that I've heard from, he clearly touched my life and the trajectory of the type of medicine I practice. So just so grateful to hear all these stories.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to say a word? If not, then we will conclude the ceremony for today. On a personal note, I haven't prepared anything, but I must say it's pretty strange for me to be here with all of you on Zoom and not with Asher by my side. I'm sitting right here where Asher used to sit and speak with all of you. Yeah, I guess in a way, and we know in all our hearts he's here with us. So, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been part of Nomi and Asher's lives, being part of their last mile, let's say. You have known them for so many years, and I've joined in the last mile, and it was my honor and my can't always find the right words in English, but I'm glad to have been able to be there for them and with them, and to have known you all. So thank you all very much as well. And we will have Menachem read the Jewish prayer, El Maleh Rachamim. בבקשה, מנחם.
לפתוח שוב את ה...
רגע אחד, כן, אני אפתח. רגע.
רגע, שנייה, אני צריך... פתחת אותו? אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה, על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת, אשר ישע בן יצחק הלוי, ואשתו נעמי בת הרב יעקב, שהלכו לעולמם, בעבור שאנו מתפללים, בעד הזכרת נשמתם, לכן בעל הרחמים, יסתירם בצתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר אמן.
אמן. תודה רבה, מנחם. Thank you very much, Menachem. And thank you all for being here today. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for participating. We will stay here. It's whoever wants can open the microphones now. Whoever would like to go, it's okay too.
Anna, thank you for bringing Asher to us and us to Asher this final mile. You've enriched our lives.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to thank you also, Dana. It's Bob.
Yes. Hi, Bob.
And I also want to, I don't think you heard this, but Laurie's story about Moshe Dayan, Asher told me the same thing. They actually lived in the same house together in Jerusalem. You knew that?
Yeah, actually, I think he told me once. Yeah, that story quite a while ago. Yeah.
He told me that Moshe Dayan was very self-conscious about his eye. Yes, and he saw a side of Moshe Dayan I guess not many people saw, because he was a tough guy normally. Moshe Dayan.
If I could just add a word, I tried to stay away from generalities, but I found it quite extraordinary that so many people mentioned the same special characteristics of Asher. And I don't think that any of us communicated before this Zoom talk. So the inter-rater reliability of these observations is really quite extraordinary.
Yes.
And his humor was mentioned repeatedly, his honesty, his all of those abilities, his modesty. Every single one that I mentioned was mentioned before it got to me. So quite amazing. And thank you, everyone. And I wrote a chat that you can all see, but I guess I would like to also thank Dana of course, to thank Ariel, but especially also to thank Donna for the amazing, caring way that she took care of Nomi and Asher during this very difficult period of their lives.
I wrote it in the chat as well, but I too, for those of us who are on the other side of the ocean, the past 7 years have been so difficult. To be so far away from people we loved so much and wanted to be with and care for has been really hard. And just knowing that you, Ariel, and you, Donna, were taking such wonderful, loving care, but also enriching their lives in so many ways with visits and meals and friends and concerts and the beach and just everything. It just means the world to me and those of us who've been so far away. Thank you.
דנה ואריאל, מרים אקרמן, להגיד שאתם שומעים אותי?
כן, כן, שלום מרים.
מה שלומך? רציתי להגיד שזה היה מאוד מאוד מרגש, למדתי מלא דברים על אשר שלא ידעתי. וכל הכבוד לכם על הארגון ועל כל מה שאת עשית, גם את וגם אריאל, עבורם.
תודה רבה לך, מרים.
חם ברוך.
תודה, מרים.
טוב, אולי תסכים אותה.
תודה רבה לכולם. תודה.
קשה להתפרד.
דבי פה.
Much love to everybody and much gratitude.
Does anyone know the story about Usher hosting Ted Kennedy in the Negev?
No. Tell us.
I was hoping to hear someone else's version. No one remembers. Asher was driving. Ted Kennedy, our senator from Massachusetts, came to the Negev, and in the car, a long drive, Asher talked about how you drive by a block and there's another medical school grows up, but Kennedy appeared to be asleep. The next day, however, Ted Kennedy played back in his speech what he had heard Asher saying.
What did he say? Do you know?